The lights in the grand ballroom dimmed as the orchestra swelled into a slow, haunting waltz. Hundreds of tuxedos and glittering gowns turned toward the center of the floor, where the CEO of Meridian Tech, Charles Hart, stood at the podium, his voice booming with practiced authority. But no one was watching him anymore. All eyes were on the edge of the dance floor, where a quiet janitor in a worn black uniform, still carrying the faint scent of floor polish, had just extended his calloused hand to the CEO's daughter. Evelyn Hart, blind since birth, stood alone in her pale silver gown, her head tilted toward the music like it was the only thing anchoring her in the room. She had been ignored all night, a beautiful afterthought in her father's world of power and flash. Then came the moment that stopped every heartbeat. She placed her hand in his. The room froze. Whispers erupted like sparks. Who is that man? The cleaner? Does he even know who she is? Daniel Cross didn't hesitate. He led her gently to the center, his steps sure and unhurried, as if they had practiced this 1,000 times in some other life. The music wrapped around them, and they began to dance, slow, graceful, perfect. Evelyn's face lit up with a smile so pure it hurt to watch. For the first time that night, she wasn't alone. No one knew that Daniel had once been someone else entirely. No one knew the secret Charles Hart carried like a blade in his chest. And no one could have predicted how one dance would unravel everything the gala thought it knew about power, shame, and second chances. Daniel Cross was 38, but the years had carved deeper lines into his face than most men his age. He had lost his wife, Sarah, 5 years earlier to a sudden illness that no amount of overtime could pay for. Left with their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, he had traded his old life as a mid-level engineer at a rival tech firm for the anonymity of a janitor's uniform at Meridian Tech. The pay was steady, the hours long, and the work invisible. That was exactly what he wanted. Every evening after tucking Lily into bed with stories of stars she could still see in picture books, Daniel drove to the gleaming headquarters and mopped floors that cost more per square foot than his entire apartment. He liked the quiet hours after everyone left. The building felt less like a temple to ambition and more like a place where ghosts could breathe. He had seen Evelyn Hart many times over the years, though always from a distance. She came to the office sometimes, guided by an assistant or her father, her white cane tapping softly against marble. She was 24 now, intelligent, kind, with a laugh that echoed like wind chimes. Daniel had overheard enough conversations to know she loved music, especially the old jazz records her mother used to play before she passed when Evelyn was a child. Charles Hart rarely spoke of his late wife. The loss had hardened him into someone who measured love in stock prices and acquisitions. On the night of the annual Meridian Gala, a charity event meant to showcase the company's generosity, Daniel was assigned cleanup duty in the ballroom wings. He wasn't supposed to be seen, but the caterers were short-staffed, and he ended up lingering near the service doors, wiping down spills no one else noticed. That's when he saw her. Evelyn stood near the grand piano, alone, her fingers brushing the keys without pressing them. The music had paused between sets, and the crowd was mingling, laughing, networking. She wore a dress that shimmered like moonlight on water, but her shoulders were hunched, her face turned toward the sound of distant chatter as if searching for someone who might notice her. Daniel watched for a long moment. Then, almost without thinking, he stepped forward. "Miss Hart?" His voice was low, careful. She turned her head slightly. "Yes?" "They're about to start the next song. It's a waltz. Would you like to dance?" A ripple of silence fell around them as nearby guests overheard. A janitor asking the CEO's daughter to dance? It was absurd. Laughable. But Evelyn didn't laugh. She listened to his voice, the gentle timbre, the absence of pity, and something in her softened. "I'd like that very much," she said. He took her hand. It was small, warm, trembling just a little. He placed his other hand at her waist, light as a promise, and guided her to the floor. The orchestra, sensing the shift in the room, began the waltz anew. They moved together like they had known each other forever. Daniel counted the steps in his head, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, keeping his rhythm steady so she could feel it in his frame. Evelyn followed without fear, her blind trust complete. For those minutes, the gala disappeared. There was only the music and the two of them turning in slow circles. Charles Hart watched from the podium, his glass frozen halfway to his lips. His face drained of color. When the song ended, applause broke out, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Evelyn laughed, breathless, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you," she whispered. "That was beautiful." Daniel bowed slightly, old-fashioned. "It was my honor." He stepped back into the shadows, but the moment had already changed everything. Later, as the night wore on, Charles approached him in a quiet corridor away from the crowd. The CEO's eyes were stormy, his voice barely above a whisper. "You," he said. "I know who you are." Daniel met his gaze evenly. "I figured you might, one day." The gala continued, but the air had shifted. Whispers followed Daniel like smoke. Who was this janitor who danced like a man who had once worn tuxedos? Why had Evelyn looked so alive in his arms? Charles' heart waited until the final guests were leaving before he called Daniel to his private office overlooking the city skyline. Evelyn was there too, seated on a leather couch, her hands folded in her lap. "Sit," Charles said, voice tight. Daniel remained standing. "I'd rather not." Charles paced once, then stopped. 5 years ago, you worked for Nova Dynamics. You were lead engineer on the accessibility project, the voice interface software for the visually impaired. My company bought Nova out. I shut the project down. Too expensive. Not profitable. Daniel nodded slowly. "I remember. You fought me in the boardroom. Publicly. Called me heartless. Said the software could have changed lives, like your daughter's friend who was losing her sight. You were fired the next week. Blackballed in the industry. Your wife got sick right after. Medical bills buried you." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Charles looked at his daughter, then back at Daniel. "I didn't know about Sarah. I didn't know you took the janitor job here so you could, what? Keep an eye on me? Punish me?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "I took it because it paid the bills and let me be home for Lily every night. I stayed because this building still had people who needed someone to care about the small things. And because Evelyn deserved to walk halls that weren't afraid of her." Evelyn's breath caught. "You knew me?" Daniel turned to her. "I saw you reading Braille in the lobby once. You smiled at the security guard even when he forgot to hold the door. I heard you humming jazz tunes while waiting for your father. I thought, if no one else noticed, at least the floors would be clean for you." Tears slipped down Evelyn's cheeks. "You danced with me tonight like I wasn't broken." "You aren't broken," Daniel said fiercely. "You're the only one here who sees with her heart." Charles sank into his chair, looking older than his 55 years. "I let the project die because I was ashamed. Evelyn was born blind. I thought, if I built an empire big enough, I could buy her sight back somehow. When I couldn't, I buried the guilt in work. I stopped seeing her. I stopped seeing anyone." He looked up at Daniel. "You could have hated me. You could have walked away. Instead you stayed. You danced with my daughter when no one else would." Daniel shrugged. "I didn't do it for you." Charles stood, crossed the room, and extended his hand, not as a boss, but as a man. "I'm sorry. For everything. And I'm reinstating the accessibility division tomorrow. With you leading it, if you'll have it." Daniel stared at the hand, then at Evelyn, who was smiling through her tears. "I don't need your job," Daniel said. "But I'll take it for the people it can help. And for her." He shook Charles's hand. Evelyn rose and walked to Daniel, finding his arm by touch. "Will you dance with me again sometime? Not at a gala. Just because." Daniel covered her hand with his. "Every chance I get." As they left the office together, Evelyn's cane tapping beside Daniel's steady steps, Charles watched from the window. For the first time in years, the city lights didn't feel cold. Sometimes the greatest secrets aren't hidden in boardrooms or bank accounts. They're hidden in quiet acts of kindness, in a single dance that reminds us we are all deserving of being seen. And sometimes, the man who cleans the floors is the only one brave enough to lift someone up when the world looks away.